Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order this month's meeting of the WTA board. We have some slight changes to the agenda, but we'll begin with a roll call, please.
Yes, Davidson.
Here.
Donovan.
Here.
Fleetwood. And we do know Mayor Fleetwood is with us.
I'm here.
Hawkinson?
Yeah.
Thank you. Hawkinson?
Here.
Cortez?
Here.
Lilyquist?
Here.
Williams?
Here.
And I don't believe we have Jennifer Lautenbach yet. And we have Holly Huthman absent, Satpal Sidhu, and Dan Darwin also absent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. With regard to the agenda, there is a walk-on item, approval of contract with Western Washington University. That should have been emailed to folks separately. And item F8, installation electric bus chargers at Cordata Station Midway Lot has been pulled from the agenda. Can we just have an explanation for that? And then we'll go on with the agenda as amended.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I can answer that. I was anticipating a price from our contractor on that through the job order contracting. So I put it on the agenda, but we have not received that pricing yet. We're still working on it.
Okay, no other problems
for next month's meeting.
Okay, no other problems particularly with that?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. So with that item pulled and with the walk-on item, we'll go ahead and begin. Our first item is a public hearing to receive public comment on WTA's Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP. My agenda says that Ms. Knutson would be introducing this if we need to present it before we open the hearing.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. I'll just give a brief background. We are just seeking public comment on our 2023 through 2028 Transportation Improvement Program. Just as a reminder, this is a required document by both the Federal Transportation Administration and the Washington State Department of Transportation. Every year they look for a list of capital projects of regional significance and or projects that we're seeking federal funding for that must be approved by our board of directors and then goes through our Metropolitan Planning Office, the COG, for final inclusion in the state's Transportation Improvement Program. So this was posted and the projects are listed on pages 3 and 4. The only highlight that I'll call out, just want to make sure that it's clear that the 2023 fixed route bus order is listed twice there for the 8 buses. And this is just reflecting the issue that the board is currently considering about whether or not those will be diesel or electric. And then any future transitions of those buses will be determined based on as we go through the zero emission transition plan.
Okay, thank you. Before we open the hearing, are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, I will now open the public hearing. If people would like to either raise their hand or unmute themselves and ask to be recognized if you want to give comment. If I don't receive comment, we'll just go ahead and close the public hearing. Again, is there anyone who wishes to comment on WTA's tip for?
If I could, just for the record, we also received no written comments as well. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's important information as well. Thank you.
Michael, I do have a question on, oh, you know what? I'm looking at something different. I'm fine. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, darn, I thought we had a taker. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close the oral testimony portion of the public hearing. Minutes will note that there's also no written commentary received. Bring it back to the board. Is an action expected on the tip today?
Yes, please. Now that we have no public comment, we will be seeking approval shortly.
And it is under F1 for board actions.
Board members.
Do you need a motion?
I do.
Move to approve the tip.
Second.
Okay, I'm not sure who seconded it. I saw Ali's lips move.
I think
Okay.
me and Seth were fighting for it.
Is there any further discussion? Again, the board has seen this several times. It's an annual action. It can be updated, I believe, in the middle of the year if necessary.
Yes, that's correct.
I'm going to go ahead and call the vote. The procedure we've been using in Zoom is that if there are no objections, we'll consider all motions passed unanimously. Please feel free to raise any objections. Are there any objections to passing the motion? Hearing none, the motion considered passed unanimously. Thank you very much. The tip for the years 2023 through 2028 is adopted.
Thank you.
The next item is citizen communications. Have we received any written communications, or are there any members of the public who wish to unmute and speak to the board?
We've received no written communications, and when I checked before, and it looks like we have nobody in person in our hybrid format either. But I don't know if there's anybody online who wants to talk.
I would note that over the last month, I fielded several emails and inquiries with regard to WTA's anticipated bus purchases with Gillig, the 8 buses we talked about being all diesel, all electric, or some number in between. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the citizen communications portion, and we're now going to go to closed session, which means that we will adjourn from this open session for approximately 15 minutes and go to a breakout room in Zoom land and then return here to this same meeting. The closed session is authorized under state law RCW 42.30.140 section 4B for the purpose of discussing a collective bargaining agreement. We expect this session to take about 15 minutes. No action will be taken in the closed session, and none is expected following the closed session. Okay, we're ready to be taken to the breakout room.
Yes, I just want to say Jen Lautenbach has arrived, and I'll send you over with everyone else.
Nice, thanks, Jen.
Thanks. We'll go ahead and pause the recording, and when they come back, we will start it up again. If there's any updates in the time, I'll let you know that. Thank you.
Thanks.
You can end the breakout session, Audra. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. We just adjourned from a closed session to discuss collective bargaining agreements. No action was taken. No action is taken on that matter now. And so we'll go to regular board action items. We have 8 items listed, and the 8th one was pulled and a new one was added. We'll go ahead and we already disposed of F1, consideration of approval of the tip. Didn't we already pass that motion, I believe?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so then we'll go on to consideration of approval of fare rates and rule revisions. We've already had a public hearing on this, I believe. Ms. Coleman, is there more to say?
Not unless anyone has any questions about the content. We've talked about it a couple of times, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Michael, I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion before us to approve the rules and fare revisions, which are relatively minor in nature. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'm going to go ahead and call the vote with the procedure that if there are any objections, if there are no objections, the motion will be considered passed unanimously by the board. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that passes. Thank you very much. The next item is consideration of a modification number 1 to the Skagit Transit WTA County Connector Program Interlocal Agreement. Ms. Coleman, this is you again, and we have also discussed this. And again, it's relatively minor in nature.
It is. The only thing that I would add is that Skagit had their board meeting yesterday, and I'm still waiting to hear back if they have aligned with us exactly, or if they are wanting to, which would mean that we start youth at ended 18 and under and start at high school age, so basically freshman year. And they may want to go to 15, and if that's the case, we will make that change too. But I haven't heard back yet, so as soon as I do, I will let you know if we need to make that minor change.
Looking for a discussion or a motion?
So would we move approval with the understanding that that change will happen if necessary? Or how does that work?
Maybe we could move approval as is and then do a second motion that would authorize me if that gets changed to amend authorization to sign to amend accordingly.
All right, I move that.
I'll second that.
There is a motion to approve the agreement as written, but further authorizing WTA's general manager to make the minor revision if we need to align the agreement with Skagit's board's action. Does that seem acceptable to everyone? Okay, so that is the motion. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call the question. If there are no objections, we'll consider the motion passed unanimously. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously to approve or the modification with WTA and Skagit Transit Community Connector Program interlocal agreement. The next one is consideration of approval of a contract with Western Washington University. We have a separate document which was sent to us on this. Ms. Walteri, are you going to begin, or Les, do you want to introduce this?
I'll just say I just want to thank Megan and Tammy and Tim for being our negotiating team with Western. It's a complicated set of facts and negotiations with Western to arrive at this, and they did an amazing job. Because of the extent of the negotiations and the time, I apologize that it came in late to you yesterday. But timing wise is working out so we can keep the agreement moving forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Megan.
Thanks, Les. As I don't know, do we want to put the item up since it was just emailed to the board and not part of the public packet that was issued?
Yes, please. Josh, can you handle that? Great.
So while Josh is doing that, we are looking for the board of directors to approve a one-year contract with Western Washington University for WTA to provide Western with a student and employee bus pass that enables student employees of Western to access all of WTA's service at a reduced fare. We're also asking that the board authorize the general manager to execute any optioned extensions without further board approval. So the contract is written for a total of 4 years in one-year terms. That enables us to have those conversations with Western at the beginning of the year to discuss a cap. Last June, the board approved an extension to our agreement that kind of changes the way that we bill Western for access to WTA's service. And instead of a bulk rate based on an FTE calculation, we switched to a per tap model and then also added Western staff to that program. So part of that discussion last year that the board approved was we put a cap on the program, and we designed it so that that cap was high enough that WTA could have reasonable fare recovery throughout the course of the year, of the academic year, and also give Western a little bit of ability to budget, right, for this particular program. So the new agreement mimics that last modification, and really the only major change to that is we've reduced the cap to $1 million. Every year when we sit down with Western and kind of talk about the program, that's part of our goal, is to look at their total ridership, look at how much access to the system they're actually using, and either leave the cap where it's at or give us the ability to increase it, just again to help Western budget and to provide WTA with reasonable fare recovery. The other change is we do have a way to calculate use of the system in the event that, passes don't work, or we're having some kind of a, technical difficulty, which I'm sure everybody can kind of relate to going forward. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I really.
The other thing on the cap is to reflect youth ride free.
Yes.
Because there is a portion now of Western's population that would be entitled to ride free. So we had to reflect that as well in good faith.
Thanks for that reminder, Les. Yes, and then that was the other addition, the other change from last year's modification to this year's new contract is we do have, we have it prescribed in there how we calculate those free rides, especially when we've got freshmen that turn 18 in the middle of an academic year. So I'll answer any questions if anybody has any right now.
I have one. So just doing the math a little bit. So $1 million cap, 50 cents a ride, that's 2 million rides, 365 days a year, 5,500 rides a day. Or if you assume it's a round trip, that's 2,800 people a day doing a round trip. Is that a kind of where ridership is at? Or are we nowhere near that number? Or is it just kind of ballparking where are we at?
I'm going to have Tim or Tammy answer that question for you, Scott.
Yeah, I was trying to anticipate that question, Scott. I was trying to pull up that information. I couldn't find the specific spreadsheet, but I'm thinking it was around 400,000 trips over this last year. But that wasn't accounting for the 18-year-olds either. So I think, and you do the simple math, and that's about $800,000 if you do 50 cents a tap. So I think we're in the order of reasonableness here in terms of the ridership, granted that it's likely to grow a bit over this next year and not accounting for the 18-year-olds.
So you said 400,000, 50 cents a tap is $200,000, right? Not 800.
I have a little bit more current information just in that the last couple of months, because I pull the ridership at the end of each month to send to Western and bill them. It's been varying between about 79,000 and about 85,000. And that's at the end of spring quarter, which is not typically a real high ridership time. Fall quarter, I'm guessing is probably going to be like 120,000 a month, something like that, maybe a little bit more. However, that doesn't include having the youth taken out of that, because right now we aren't doing that because they're not free until July 1st. So
I guess I should have said 800,000. Got the numbers flipped.
So originally this was an agreement for student riders. This now includes employees. Is that a new element?
Yes and no.
Yeah. Go ahead, Megan.
We'd originally, when we were doing the bulk rate passes, we had two separate contracts. We had a contract for students and a contract for staff and faculty, because for Western, those money pools come from two different sources. But adding them all together, it made more sense. It makes it a little bit cleaner for both agencies. There's only one contract to manage instead of two. So we combined them in an effort to be a little bit more efficient.
So
the numbers that Tammy just reported, those were overall Western numbers, employees and students combined.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you take the 120,000, which sounds like a high number, and you multiply it times 12, you're going to get about 1.5 million rides in a year, which is still under the 2 million. So we're not, with all that, we won't probably hit the $1 million cap for a while.
No.
So that being said,
summer's going to be much lower, right?
Yeah. So that
summer
means
is very low, and so are winter and spring are much lower than fall. Fall is definitely the largest, highest ridership.
all right. That being said, I'll move that we approve this new contract.
I'll second.
One last question. It's a 1-year contract, renewable for 4 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion
can
for
you-
it is to approve a one-year contract with 4 extensions, authorizing the WTA general manager to execute those one-year extensions. The first year's contract is $1 million cap, but as discussion indicated, we don't anticipate actually hitting the $1 million cap using the 50 cent per tap pay scheme.
Ally, you had raised your hand. Did you have another question?
Just for my own can you remind me what we brought in from Western in 2021?
It was about 990,000. It was under $1 million. And that was the largest year of ridership that we've ever had.
And do we have kind of number in the back of your head of what you anticipate for 2022? I mean, we know it'll be less than $1 million, but.
Yeah. I'm going to defer to Tim or Tammy.
Tim, do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't projected out the ridership, but I think we anticipate it to certainly grow. And I think the factor there is how the classes are held. So they had a significant number of hybrid classes still in this last year, and I anticipate that they're going to go more to in-person, but that's not going to be completely eliminated. So I think we anticipate it's going to grow, but we didn't see a whole lot of growth throughout the year in terms of that Western ridership. It stayed pretty stable. So our estimates would be fairly conservative. We haven't projected out a specific number though.
Thank you.
So the motion is to approve the contract, which does authorize the general manager to renew the contract. So Russ will have that authority without coming back to the board, even though it's $1 million cap this year and maybe an equally large number in future years. I suppose it would be nice, Les, to just simply get a report.
Yeah, I was going to say
we extend the contract, but at this point we would be giving away that authority to the general manager as part of his regular duties.
Yeah, and if it materially changes too, we'll have to come back to the board. But as it rolls and we execute, that'll be the trigger to come to the board before I sign, just to give an update.
Is there any further discussion of this matter? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the question. If there's no objection, we'll consider the motion passed unanimously. Again, it is approval, authorize the general manager to enter into a contract for student and employee bus pass program with Western Washington University. Are there any objections?
I'm going to abstain, Michael, because I'm a Western employee.
Okay. Hearing no objections, the motion passes, except with noting the absence of Executive Sidhu and the abstention of Todd Donald.
Thank you.
Very much. Okay, let me go back to the agenda. Next item is consideration of the setting of a public hearing for the Transportation Development Plan. There was a recommendation, I believe, from the executive committee to approve this. Again, this just sets the hearing for an annually required document that we need to submit to state or federal authorities. I can't remember which one.
State authorities, yes.
State authorities. Tim, is there any more to add to this? We're just setting the public hearing at this point.
Yeah, you'll hear more about this item at your next meeting, so I won't spend any time on it, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. I guess the last note I would make is that this will go out for public comment on July 1st. So we'll be able to collect any comments and submit those to the board on July 21st.
Looking for a motion to set the public hearing for July 21st.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. If there are no objections, I'll consider it passed unanimously. Are there any objections? Hearing none, passed unanimously. The hearing is set for next month. Next item is consideration of a contract for fixed route air conditioning retrofit with complete coach works. Mr. Bazzo.
Good morning. Yes. So I'm requesting that the board of directors approve a contract with Complete Coach Works for $474,000 to retrofit 8 fixed route Gillig buses with air conditioning. Also authorize the general manager to execute any potential change orders needed for up to $150,000 in case we need to do more buses. Background, staff issued a request for proposals requesting detailed labor and material pricing to retrofit up to 18 buses. We received one proposal. Staff reviewed that proposal versus our estimates and other projects of similar scope, and negotiated a price decrease with Complete Coach Works of about $2,000. So the price for bus is $54,457. We also reviewed the requirements for our launch to make sure we have enough buses for the summer launch, excluding the Western trailer and other buses for that service. So we were able to reduce the number of buses from 18 to 8. We also looked at, replacement coaches that we have on order or will have on order. And so we were looking at only doing 8 buses at this time. The cost was budgeted in our 2022 capital budget program. Any questions?
Mike, please remind us, how many buses already have air conditioning?
Right now, we have a total of 27. We'll have the 2 electric coaches that'll be fabricated in January, bringing it to 29. And then we have our 7 that we have will be delivered later this year, the diesel coaches. So we'll have a total of 36. This 8 will bring us up to 44 for next summer.
So why the push now for these specific buses? Some of them have been in service for 13 years, and
Yeah.
Why are we just thinking about this now? And why do we even need it?
Well,
for a
last summer,
13-year-old bus?
last summer we experienced some very severe hot weather that put a strain on our drivers and our passengers. So we're trying to, do the right thing for both, and make sure we can, have a comfortable ride for our passengers. The interior of the buses were, without air conditioning, were hitting 100 degrees last summer.
So this is an acknowledgement that it's just going to remain hot, or is by doing this we're going to guarantee it won't be like 100 degrees for a couple of years?
Well, there's no guarantee, is there? But we're trying to take care of our riders. The buses that we will do, these 8, will be in service for at least another 3 years. So we're not doing buses that we're replacing next year or the following year. So we're analyzing those and doing the buses that will be in service at least 3 years, which is.
And if I recall, the way these are installed, they really can't be picked up and moved to the next bus. That they go away with the bus when we surplus it. Is there any kind of air filtration with adding AC? Is there some benefit there in terms of air filtration?
No, they'll have the same filtration system that all the buses do. That's upstream of the AC unit.
It's really what we're trying to do. New buses all come with air conditioning. We're just trying to find a bridge based on experience over the last couple of years and prognosticating. Looking forward.
Board members, any further discussion on the motion? This is a roughly $500,000 expense. It is in the budget. It now needs approval if we're going to go ahead.
I just want to say it's crazy that it costs that much to put air conditioning on a bus. My friend replaced like the whole HVAC air conditioning system in his giant bar 2 years ago, and it was like $40,000.
I understand. That's why we took a hard look at this and reduced the number of buses. It is, yeah, it is a lot of money. It's a special unit. It's a lot of work. We required that the bus manufacturer approve the equipment going in this bus to make sure it works properly. So
That all makes sense to me. And I know it's more expensive, on the back end than the front end, but just for, comparison's sake, how much is it to add it to a new bus? Like in production, it's way less, right?
yeah, it's about $30,000.
Thank you. Do we have a motion yet?
Nope.
I'll move approval.
All right, I'll second.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Ally. Any further discussion? Yeah, I don't like the price tag either. However, I think it's necessary for the health and welfare of our drivers and of our passengers. So I'm going to be voting for it. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call a question. If there are no objections, I'll consider the motion passed unanimously. Are there any objections? Hearing none, passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let me get back to the agenda. I think we're getting close to the end. The next one is consideration of approval of increasing the general manager's purchasing authority with associated petroleum products for fuel. Who is going to be introducing this item?
That would be me again.
Go ahead, Mike.
So, okay. I was waiting for acknowledgement there. So yes, as everyone's aware, fuel prices have drastically increased this year. We've analyzed our fuel cost at this time and for the rest of the year and the amount of fuel we're purchasing, and requesting that the board increase the general manager's purchasing authority with Associated Petroleum by $1,150,000 for a total budget or cost of $2.5 million. It's a lot of money. We're constantly looking at it, but that's where the state we are right now. APP, we have a contract with them. And we received a reduced price from the rack price, which is what the refineries are charging when you pick up at the refinery. Any questions?
Well,
I don't have a question per se, but I'm hoping that we can get a quarterly review of what our fuel prices are instead of yearly, because with fuel prices being so dynamic and ever changing, it'd be nice to kind of have a better oversight on that. Just because it's going to allow us to make some better informed decisions when it comes to hybrid buses and that kind of thing, because that's a lot of money for gas. So.
Agreed. One thing I want to explain to the board is 7-8 years ago, when I first started at WTA, we had a discussion with the board of fuel prices. Of course, back then it was another increase, and the board was under the agreement that let's not try to budget for the worst case scenario, budget for what costs are, and if increases happen like we are right now, to bring it to the board to discuss it and review it. So that's what we've been doing ever since. Yeah, we're trying to be upfront with our fuel costs.
So just a little note, fuel cost is under 3% of WTA's total annual budget. Unfortunately, this would bump it up to, 5% of WTA's total annual budget. It hasn't been the main driver, but it certainly has the ability to tip the balance considerably, especially if it's $1 million or nearly doubling. Yeah, definitely worth tracking.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, so
We
we'll
track
we'll
it-
do
we
that. Eric.
Track it every month, so whenever
we'll-
we can
we'll-
bring it forward.
We'll do it a quarterly report, Eric. I think that's a good idea. Thank you.
So we'll be looking for a motion to basically double the general manager's authority to, I'm sorry, what's the new number? $2.5 million
Yes,
for
sir.
the total for 2022.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Scott. Any further discussion?
Let's get the bugs worked out with those electric buses.
They're both on the road today.
Awesome.
Yeah, I saw one yesterday. So that is really interesting, right? One thing that would drive the equation towards electric buses if the total operating expenses are, suddenly more advantageous just due to fuel costs.
And that'll be a good topic under the board reports.
Okay, is there any further discussion? We have a motion for us to approve increasing the general manager's authority. If there are no discussions, I'll call the question. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Use the money wisely, Les. Item F8 has been pulled from the agenda. We now move to the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
And I'll second.
Okay, are there any objections to passing the consent agenda? Hearing none, the consent agenda is passed unanimously. We'll move on to reports to the board. Mr. Wilder, it says that you're up for this one for zero emission fleet transition plan update.
Yes, so I'll just kick this off. I'll be very brief because I think you want to hear from the consultants and not from us. But I will say that this is the first meeting of the board out of 3 on the zero emission fleet transition plan. Long awaited effort here, and hopefully we can answer most of your questions over the course of the project. But today you will have an opportunity to ask questions. But before we do that, we want to introduce the team. We want to introduce the scope of the project. So I'm going to be very brief, and I'm going to hand this over to Transpo and STV, and I believe Mr. Paul Kaufman will be introducing this item.
Actually, this will be a little bit confusing, guys, but we have a Paul Sharman and a Paul
Okay.
Kaufman, so I'll take the screen share here.
I'm Paul too.
You hear from the 2 Pauls today.
I'm not Paul.
So thanks everyone for having us. My name is Paul Sharman. I'm a transportation planner and engineer with Transport Group, and we've got our other lovely Paul here with us from STV. Thought we'd quickly touch on the zero emission bus transition plan that we've just gotten under contract for. Really looking forward to getting underway with this. Quick agenda for what we have planned today. Just kind of a quick meet and greet with the team. We have 5 of us here. Introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about our experience with this work, how we've assisted other agencies, go over the project schedule, and then give a quick kind of overview of the state of the zero emission bus technology practice. And then we had hoped to have some Q&A time. I don't know what your flexibility is to go past 9. We'll go through this as quickly as we can and make sure you guys have some time to ask questions. So our team here at Transpo Group, myself here at the top, Paul Sharman, I'm kind of the electrification lead here at Transpo, having assisted a number of these projects. And then Chris, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Chris Tights with Transpo, and I am the firm's transit subject matter expert and have a pretty wide experience in a number of different transit studies, including electrification.
And STV?
Yes, Paul Kaufman with STV, manager of bus fleet engineering. I'm responsible for anything for STV nationwide bus. That could include procurement, electrification, facility design, and the list goes on. I'm going to turn it over to Michael next.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Pearl with STV. I work with Paul, and exactly as Paul is, I am also responsible for anything to do with rubber-wheeled vehicles in any transit agency throughout North America. And that's not only vehicles, it's facilities, it's bus route design, it's the whole gamut of running a bus company.
And Canada, I might point out. Jason?
All right, my name is Jason Rogers with STV. I'm the local rep shoes on the ground here in the state of Washington. I live in northern Seattle and have some background with bus manufacturing companies as well as electric vehicle manufacturing company.
Awesome. So just quickly touching on some of our experience, we've got Transpo's kind of recent quals on the left here. We've just worked with Jefferson Transit Authority over on the peninsula, putting together an electric bus feasibility study. We actually partnered with STV on that study. We have recently completed another one for Orange County over in New York, also working with STV. And then a number of years ago, we did a study for SeaTac, looking at converting their airport shuttle to fully electric. And then STV, do you want to cover your recent project work?
Yeah, I do want to point out that no transit agency for STV is too large or too small. I also want to point out that you saw 3 pictures in front of you today, but STV has 2,500 employees, including architects, engineers, et cetera. And we call upon a lot of them as we move through master plans. So we are responsible for, in a joint venture with another consultant, WSP, for the development of the master plan for LA Metro, a very large agency, 11 garages, 2,100 buses that have to be all electric by 2030. I'm going to let that sink in. It is 2022. We are also working for the Toronto Transit Commission, again, master plan, but here, buses, paratransit vans, and their non-revenue fleet. It's the entire gambit of anything in their fleet that has rubber tires. Also doing a ZEB infrastructure planning effort for NCTD. That's also a contest, if you will. We have one garage that's going to run battery electric buses, another that's going to run hydrogen fuel cell, and may the best bus win, as well as designing each of their facilities to accommodate battery electric and hydrogen. The ZEB master plan for NYPA just completed, included 5 agencies in New York State, large and small, from Albany to Westchester County in Yonkers, New York. And then the ZEB transition plan is underway for HRT and Pace Bus in Chicago, HRT being in Virginia Beach. And we are designing a new maintenance facility for HRT as well.
So wanted to hit on the project schedule here. There's kind of a lot of information in here, and I'll try to go through this quickly, but we'll leave time for questions later. So task 1 is just project management and board meetings. We have a number of these tentatively scheduled where we'll check in throughout the project. This one today here in June, another one in September, when we've kind of done kind of the bulk of the analysis, but haven't put the plan yet together. And then we'll have another check-in when we've got either a draft or final plan, depending on when we can get on the agenda later this year. So I was going to run through the tasks.
Can I step in there a little bit on that timeline?
Absolutely.
So the board will be wanting to review or order with Gillig. I think the date I remember in my head was around September. Can we get a confirmation about when the board might need to make a decision and how that lines up with the timeline in front of us?
We have some flexibility with Gillig. We were shooting for October, more from a policy perspective, because it will work well with the budgeting cycle, so we know what the budget into 2023. So that's what this aligns with, is that October decision point.
So that letter A deliverable is what we'll be looking for.
Yeah, we can approve. What we're driving towards is providing the board enough information for that October meeting to make a decision. Also build in time to find out on our grants as well on that. And then we can adopt at a certain point later. It doesn't have to be tied with that decision. But we wanted to tee it up for October for budgeting purposes and provide that information. So I think this aligns with that.
Thank you. Just want to confirm. Paul, sorry for interrupting. Keep going.
No,
I have a question.
Yep.
Can you elaborate on, maybe you're going to hit this, what's involved in the technology assessment?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll go through the tasks here in a little more detail. So task 2 would be, kind of understanding the existing fleet and operations that WTA currently provides. And this is going to include fixed route, paratransit, and non-revenue vehicles as well. And then task 3, the technology assessment, will be kind of putting together a state of the practice. We'll touch on some of that information later here. Paul at STV will kind of give an overview, but we'll document this clearly within the plan. Kind of where the technology is, where it's going, both for battery electric and for hydrogen fuel cell. And then task 4, the policy and strategy summary. This will look at the different, local, state, federal policies driving a lot of this work, where the funding's coming from, any local kind of targets for hitting zero emissions that, include both, local Whatcom goals, your own internal goals, state goals for when PSE needs to hit 100%, renewable energy. All that kind of stuff will be summarized to talk about kind of where the state of this is going over the next kind of 10 to 15 years. And then task 5, the route planning and analysis. This is really the meat of the analysis here. This will be a really detailed model of all of WTA's fixed route services. So we'll have a really good understanding of the mileage driven every day, the passenger loading, the terrain, the ambient air temperature, all the things that affect an electric bus's range. So we'll put together a really detailed model of the whole thing to really understand what the energy requirements are for each of the different routes, the driver blocks, the current schedule that WTA currently adheres to, so that we can understand what the energy density requirements are for transition to a zero emission fleet. And then after that, or kind of in conjunction with that, we'll put together facility needs. We'll go out, tour the facility, see what kind of infrastructure is there, and put together a plan for how what facility expansion will be required to support this transition over the next however many years. And that will all feed into the draft zero emission transition plan, which is there in task 7. So shooting to have a draft plan by the end of October, which will kind of include the timeline for how we recommend WTA transition to a zero emission fleet, the timeline, the costs associated with that, expected greenhouse gas emission savings, all that information will be included in there. And then I forgot to mention also, there'll be a long-term planning section in there as well that will kind of look at where the technology is headed in the future, kind of the long-term outlook on hydrogen versus electric bus. I know we all kind of have our own thoughts about this. The technology is definitely leaning electric bus in the near future, but long-term might be a little more hydrogen friendly. So we'll kind of summarize all that research and talk about where the industry is headed in that last task there. So any questions here? We'll move forward to kind of the state of the zero emission bus technology practice, and I'll turn it over to Paul.
And thank you, Paul. All right, so we're gonna run through just about everything that Paul just mentioned, and I'm gonna welcome. We have a Q&A at the end, but if anyone wants to jump in as I go through things, please feel free. So there's taking a look at BEB operations. Of course, you folks have your 2 in operation now, with another 2 on order with Gillig. There are a number of ways to charge them. You can plug them in. You can use pantographs for an electrical connection on the roof of the bus, or you could even do an induction.
I'm sorry, Paul. Pantographs. Is that the overhead wire trolley kind of thing, or what?
Actually, no. It's an overhead, if you will, Michael. Envision a device that lowers itself onto the roof of the bus. The roof of the bus would have what's referred to as charging rails, and then the device would lower down to those charging rails, make a connection, and charge the bus that way.
Okay, but that's not en route charging. That's in a station or in a docking port.
No, right, that is not en route charging. That would be at your maintenance facility. We do and have designed en route chargers with pantographs. I don't want to influence anyone here, but we kind of like the pantograph. I do personally. It keeps the high voltage up on the roof of the bus, then down where the people are. So just something to think about. Another process is induction charging. Some people may be familiar with the Duracell mat, where you place your phone on the mat. You don't actually plug it in, but yet it charges the battery magically. The same thing can be done on buses. If you follow this stuff in the news, you just saw that a mile stretch of road over in Europe was just paved, and it has the ability to charge an electric car while you drive over it. That is an example of induction wireless charging. Right now you have 200 kilowatt chargers at your facility, and that can charge the bus in 3 to 4 hours, and that's dependent upon how many miles you cover during the course of the day. There are 5 manufacturers. We always stay focused on our manufacturers. We understand, you know, federal funds comes with its restrictions. You have to meet Buy America. You have to have Altoona testing. Right now, there are 5 manufacturers out there that meet those federal criteria, and they could be, and those are Gillig, as you know, New Flyer, Novabus, Eldorado, and Proterra. Bus charging for your operation, strongly recommend that you do it via depot or en route charging. En route, once we get done with our route analysis for you, I doubt you're going to need en route charging. Much prefer depot charging. It's the same model that you do today. Put your energy on the bus today with diesel fuel, and the bus drives around the next day. The same thing would happen here. You charge at night and drive the next day. There are also sustainability and resiliency efforts underway. These are 2 very famous words in our industry, if you will. And we will want to talk to you about possibility of on-site energy storage options. We do this for a number of our clients. Why is this important? It's important because you can charge 1 bank of batteries during the course of the day at a slow rate without incurring what's known as a demand charge, and then you use those batteries to charge your buses at night. This keeps you in a better financial position with your utility. We also like to encourage our clients to enter into utility negotiations and pursue your own specific transit tariff rate for mass transit. A number of our clients have been successful in doing this. It's not always easy to do, but you can move to probably eliminate demand charges. We've seen examples of that, or get a better rate for the cost of a kilowatt.
Paul, are we a large enough entity that would be attractive for the utility to consider?
I'm going to answer that this way, Michael. It's very difficult for the utilities to adapt to somebody like LA Metro, where megawatts are involved. 2 utilities are involved. I find your arrangement, the size of your property, of your operation, and the 1 utility, a much more manageable situation for you. So yes, you could go out, and I believe you could do. A lot of our smaller customers have a much easier time with these kinds of negotiations, Michael, than the larger ones. It's actually a benefit, as I see. Have I answered your question? I want to be sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Along the bottom, you see the process, or the flow of the electrons, if you will, everyone. You have the grid, it moves to a transformer, which moves to switch gear, then it moves to your bus charger, you plug the bus in, and the bus charges. That's the sequence of events that you're looking at right now. Paul, any questions? I'm sorry.
I'll have one. You mentioned the grid. I want to harp on, where's the energy actually coming from? I mean, if you take LA, 2,100 buses switching to electric, that's a significant power load. Where is it coming from?
They don't know yet. They honestly do not know that yet. I have 2 utilities. One is almost bankrupt, SCE being the better of the 2. The other one is actually city-owned. The city of Los Angeles had so much trouble with their utility power supply that they took it over. So yes, we sit down, we meet with them.
So
we tell them what we need, and then they look at us deer in the headlights.
Scott, relative to that, I had a conversation yesterday with the PSC representative, Corinne, and kind of going back to Paul's earlier comment, they are really looking to manage their demand so that they have to add only as much productive capacity as necessary, especially because it'll be the new capacity will probably be renewable. So tying the 2 items together, if we offer them a way of charging during off-peak times, that could be of great value to them in meeting their obligations, right? This would be a really inexpensive way for them to meet their obligations rather than having to add just pure capacity to handle peak load.
And I do want to, and thank you for that, Michael and Scott. I want to I'm going to drill down, and I hope I don't go too far into the weeds, but another thing that takes place that we strongly encourage and are in operation, you have it in operation where you are now, is a charge management system. And that charge management system can be programmed, optimized, whatever the case may be. You'll see our recommendations in our route analysis when we perform it for you, Scott. And I've seen examples where if you just brought every bus back in and plugged them in, okay, now we need 9 megawatts. But if you let a charge management system run that operation, the charging process, I've seen that 9 megawatts drop to 4.5 or 5. So you already have it. You just have to expand it as you increase your electric bus fleet. That was a very smart move, Scott, I have to say, because that's going to keep your total demand down.
I think Scott wants to know what method's going to be used to make that electricity.
We actually anticipated that question, Ali, and we have a slide coming up for you. Because I know I encounter that question a lot, and it is a bit of it's a tough one to get through, but we have it in here. All right, so what else is happening in the world of BEV operations? Well, everybody wants to not have diesel on the bus. They don't want diesel-fired auxiliary heaters, and they want that bus to run for 300 miles a day. We're not there yet. Okay, we're not. Your Gilligs can't do it, but we're getting better every day. The industry continues to improve. And let me tell you, the battery industry understands if they don't get to a range of, as we show here, 1,000 kilowatts of energy storage on the bus, they're going to lose to hydrogen in the long run. So they're locked in battle. And our OEMs are showing us that increases are coming. We have increases in energy density now. Over the last 5 years, we've seen it go up as much as 25%. We're going to continue to see those gains going forward. At the end of this year, we know New Flyer shall announce that they will now be at 660 kilowatts of onboard energy storage, jumping up from 525. What does this mean? It means your fuel tank is bigger, so you can go further. All right, Gillig's going to be in the driver's seat. They're going to jump up to 684 in the summer of next year. I don't know, Michael or Tim, when your next 2 Gilligs are scheduled to arrive, but it's possible you could be getting these larger, higher energy density batteries. We'd have to take a look at that.
Our build date is in January. We could not extend it to take advantage of that because of the grant requirements.
Yeah, darn. Okay, well, we can only try. Most of the times when I talk to transit agencies, I'm quick to point out that if you went through a standard procurement process, you couldn't get a bus by the summer of 2023. But understanding how Mike and Tim and the board here procures its buses, you guys enjoy a accelerated procurement process through the process we refer to as a piggyback, and this does get you online sooner. So Mike will get it on the next one, okay? All right, so we want to point to a TTC report. That's Toronto Transit Commission. It's a very telling report, and you'll see some information here. We took a look at uptime of electric buses, is what Toronto Transit did, and their standard bus is a diesel hybrid, a Nova diesel hybrid bus. That particular bus was available for revenue service 95% of the time. And here you see the BEV manufacturer that they currently operate in a lot of snow and cold, I'd like to point out. So the New Flyer bus was showing 89% uptime for revenue service. BYD is 52% and Proterra was 62%. Unfortunately, they don't have Gilligs, but we wanted you to see that, you know, New Flyer is pretty close. I mean, if their diesel hybrids at 95 and New Flyers at 89, they're there. I would expect Gillig to be in a similar arena. I know you guys are having some fun keeping them up. That was discussed earlier, but it's something we'll be looking at as we study your operation as well. All right, so what does it cost? The charging, you know what it costs. You have 200 kilowatt chargers on property. It's rule of thumb is $1,000 a kilowatt, so 150 kW charger is going to be about 150,000 grand. And then there's the transformers, conduits, cabling, fire suppression, et cetera, that comes along with it. It's not cheap. The only point I'd like to make here is it's a one-time expense. It's not one that recurs. Once you have the infrastructure, you're done.
Well, what's the lifespan? We don't know probably yet of a charger.
Well, Michael, we're back to the pantograph, unfortunately. So it comes down to how you're going to plug it in. Okay. I'm going to tell you, we've had some incidents on other electric bus projects. We've had to already change the power line between the charger and the bus, and we're having difficulty with some connections of the plug-in itself. The pantograph, far more reliable, much more expensive. But you avoid the labor question that Mike will have to deal with, which is who plugs it in and who unplugs it. The pantograph is an automatic system. There's a Wi-Fi connection between the bus and the pantograph, and you park the bus, it automatically deploys. If it doesn't deploy, you don't have the bus in the right spot, you move it around and get it into the right spot, and then it deploys, and the operator walks away, and you come back the next morning, and the bus is charged. In the plug-in style, somebody's got to unplug it and plug it in. So there's that. You're a smaller operation. This is much more manageable. In a larger operation, we would not recommend plug-in. We would go direct to pantograph. All right. So yes, the BEBs do have a higher upfront cost, but lower operating maintenance cost over the life of the bus. We can't say that today. We know Mike's been having some trouble getting the Gillies to maintain on the road every day. He's going to get there. I have every bit of confidence in him, as well as the Gillig organization. They're very dedicated to make this work. But in the end, Mike's going to have less to do. He's not going to have oil changes, transmission fluid changes, and things of that sort. You're going to reduce your waste, filters, etc., fluids that you have to dispense. And the traction motors on the buses do come with far less severe maintenance intervals. He does not have to touch that electric motor every 6,000 miles like he has to do now on a diesel bus. So only time will tell on this one, but everything we see from our electric buses going in operation across the country, this can be realized. It's not today, but we're getting there. So back to Scott and the carbon footprint. How does the utility generate electricity? Well, here we go, Scott. This is your utility. And you can see right here, coal is 23, hydroelectric's 24, natural gas is 27%. Nuclear, thankfully, is less than 1. Other is 1. Solar is 1. I love this category. Unspecified is 14. I don't know what that means, but this is right off their website. Wind is 9 for a total of 100%.
Well, my guess is unspecified is bought on the grid, wheeled power from somewhere else.
They may purchase it and they don't know the origin of that power.
I'm going to point out that the 2020 PSE mix was 35% coal. So I'm going to say they're trying to get their coal number down, and maybe Michael is right. They are buying it, but they aren't admitting it's coal, because you don't change from 35 to 23 in 1 year.
You don't, Scott, but you look at their commitment is to be 100% carbon-free electric supply by 2045. Now, that's a ways out for some folks. Yeah. Okay, that's but it gives you an idea of the difficulty that the utility is going to have getting that remaining 23% to get off this chart.
Well, Scott's going to have a fit if that's 80% unspecified.
Yeah. Well, and natural gas, they got to get out of the natural gas business if it's carbon free. I mean, so you've got 50-60% of their current power source is gone by 2045. I'm just saying.
Scott, I hear exactly where you're coming from. We encounter this daily as a question. You know, how dirty is the electric power you're giving me or selling me? And it's a darn good question. So we did anticipate it. You know, other utilities that we work with, 2045 is up there. Might be something you want to talk with them, but I gotta believe that they know that that's the soonest they can get there. Maybe coal disappears before natural gas, you know, something like that. We look north of you, south of you, and we have a transit property that is now running a windmill that charges the bus. So it actually runs a windmill which charges an on-site battery, back to that resiliency I was talking about sooner, and then that battery charges the bus at night. So first of its kind in the country, where it's 100% wind, and literally the windmill is on the bus garage property where the bus is being charged. So
Where is that?
I knew you were going to ask that, Mike. I don't know if you remember, but it was, I saw a presentation on this about a year and a half ago at an APTA conference. And it's going to come to me as I continue to talk here. But it's West Coast. I believe it is in Oregon.
Scott, this is your chance. It could be Linden's newest tourist attraction.
There we go. Yeah.
Now, I do want to spend a moment on, please be careful, people, right? Please. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've had a board member walk up to me and say, well, we're just going to put photovoltaics on the roof and that's going to pay the bill. It is not. You would need, your operation would need a 6-acre field of photovoltaic panels. The capture is not what you would like to think it's going to be. It would probably, you could put them on the roof of your building. It's probably going to pay 1/15 of the bill or supply 1/15 of the energy you use. So please don't get caught up in that. It's not a solution. I do know you have extra property, but I doubt you want to put a solar farm there, but you never know. You never know. These things will defray the cost. And Scott, you would then know that X percentage of your energy is coming from solar. It'd be far higher than 1% here. I just make that point. Okay.
On the windmill one, is it 1-to-1? So you need one windmill to generate enough electricity for one bus, or is it, yeah, because the flip side of this is, well, we have 60 buses. Do we need 60 windmills then? And
no, but remember what they're doing there, Scott. They're charging a alternate battery, a redox flow battery or some other battery technology, and then that battery charges the bus. Does it take one windmill to charge that battery and then that battery to charge the bus? I would not want to lie to you, Scott. I have to find out. If I would have to research that with the gentleman that did the presentation. I actually have the presentation and I am trying to bring it up right now while I'm talking to you, so I can answer this right here and now. But
we should probably keep scooting along here. We've got a little bit more to cover. I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Yeah, let's keep going. I have one answer for you, Scott. TriMet in Portland. I knew it was close by. I don't want to jump on the screen, but they have a 700 bus fleet. If you, you know what I'm going to do? Let's see if I can do this. Paul, I'm going to send you the link and then let's get it back to these folks so they can see what Portland is doing. Okay. All right. Fuel cells. And you're going to hear about them because of course they have longer range than a battery bus. But there are a few things you need to know. All right. The current technology is not a fuel cell bus. It's a battery dominant fuel cell bus. Okay, so this is a process where an onboard hydrogen storage system, or tanks, if you will, operates, and that supplies power, or that hydrogen is fed to the fuel cell, which generates the power. And then the power is then sent to the batteries, and then the batteries are charged, and those batteries are used to propel the bus via an electric traction motor. That sounds like a lot, folks, okay? It's a lot to do, but what is it like? It's like talking on the phone with your phone plugged in. Battery doesn't go dead as fast, does it? Because you're putting energy back in that battery while you're using. That's the state of the design, if you will, of a battery dominant fuel cell bus. Your fuel cell puts power in the batteries while your traction motor uses it up. So you don't run out. Well, you'll run out eventually, but you're using it while charging at the same time. So it has greater range. We've heard reports of 300 miles and beyond. All right, so a fuel cell, again, we make the point, is currently closer to a 1-to-1 replacement for diesel buses. They do have a 300-mile range. Will battery get there? We strongly believe that it will, especially with the increases you're seeing and hearing of in this presentation. But let's face it, we need the battery electric bus to get to that range. Fuel cell is already there. However, in comes the cost. You have hydrogen refueling, or you can make hydrogen on site. Either way, it takes up space, it's expensive, and while I encounter this at every meeting, someone here is sure to ask me, so I'll go first. We all do remember the Hindenburg. It is very explosive fuel. So, and it's retained on your bus at very high pressure, 7,500 PSI. Standard CNG buses only fuel to 3,600 PSI. Right now, only 2 OEMs can build you a fuel cell electric bus that is Altoona tested and Buy America compliant. So it's in its infancy stages. It's getting there. Some people have gone all in on it, like Sunline Transit out in California. Do I see this as the best path for you? Not today. Now, 30 years from now, hydrogen could become the do-all end-all. A lot of our crystal balls do tell us that. But when battery gets to 1,000 kilowatts on board of energy storage, the overall cost of a fuel cell bus and its infrastructure cannot compete with that. And this is a cryogenic pump. This is one method of developing the pressure for hydrogen that you see here in the picture. This was taken at a hydrogen fuel station, open to the public, that is in Oakland, California. There are still other issues with fuel cell. Obviously, you need one of these things. This is a very expensive cost. There's also a lack of available hydrogen nationwide. Hydrogen, of course, is expensive. There's very significant difference in the cost of hydrogen between on-site generation and trucking. For those who have seen Sunline Transit speak, they had a online, what's known as a reformer. That's a mechanism that makes hydrogen for them. When it's running, they pay $5 a kilogram. When that thing is down and they have to truck it in, they pay $25 a kilogram. That means on any given day, Mike's fuel budget could go up by a factor of 5 should your on-site hydrogen system go down. All right, so emissions from hydrogen processing are currently very high, back to your concern, Scott. And of course, only a handful of agencies have deployed this technology across the country. I don't see it as a good fit here. Once we do our route analysis, you're going to find that you're going to be able to get your job done with batteries. I'll know more once we do the route analysis, but an operation your size, I'm just not expecting a poor result. Paul, if you would. We're into Q&A. That was a lot in a short period of time. I hope I got it through fast enough.
Go ahead and stop sharing screen, please.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Seth.
This is sort of an obnoxious question. It's well, not obnoxious. It's but probably difficult to answer. You mentioned just a moment ago that, quote, we'll get there. You're pretty confident of that. Do we have enough information that would give us insight into the rate at which we're going to move forward to get there?
Well, that's a pretty yes. If I sat down and looked at prior history, you might remember the slide where we saw an increase of 25% in the last, let's call it 2 years. Will we see another 25% in the next 2 years? Had a discussion with Bill Fay, for those who talked to Gilly, just yesterday, and they are expecting a 2024 increase by Cummins on energy density as well. I want to point out that their last increase was 23%, one single increase. That I know Mike can't get these batteries. He tried his best. I know he did, but we just, production is production. You can't break the rules of physics. So that battery is going to become available in the summer of 23, and it represents a 23% increase. Now, do I have a crystal ball that tells me, okay, Gillig's next increase is going to be 23% and it's a year away? Of course I don't. But the quantum leaps that we're seeing these battery manufacturers take tell us we are going to get there. You just simply can't throw this much money at this technology and not find what I refer to as the super battery. You've probably seen in the news, Tesla, EPA tested their Model 3 to a 407-mile range. That was a couple of years ago. Now it's a car, it's not a bus, but they're getting there, folks. They are going to get there.
So I'm less sanguine about the idea of a greater energy density, but very optimistic about just cost per unit going down. Unless we get some weird heavy metal short, sorry, some funny ingredient shortage for the compounds. We are over time on this. This was very important. I want to put one little bug in your ear, Paul. We're looking also at bus rapid transit, and I'm hoping that we consider kind of battery electric, how it would function on that kind of route and also on the current routes that we have.
Michael, I'm going to do you one better real fast in 20 seconds. We can actually model a non-existent BRT route. In other words, you can say, we have this plan to run this BRT route down the center of town. We're going to stop here, 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 and here. And we can tell you how much energy it's going to take to do that. We've done it already for Fairfax, Virginia, and others. So it's very good information to have. I can show you what your BRT route would be running at in an all-electric vehicle.
Great, your 20 seconds is up. I
made it.
don't want to be rude, Paul, but I do want to give more room for any board questions and then continue with this meeting. And we are already late starting the next important phase of this meeting. Okay, seeing no further discussion, thank you very much, Paul and the rest of the team for presenting on that. We have 3 more reports to the board. A final state audit report. I'm hoping Aaron can handle that quickly. And then a discussion of a board meeting, executive meeting structure after that, and the general manager's report. So please, Aaron.
Yes, I will be very brief, but wanted to be sure to report back to the board that we did have our final exit conference with the state auditor's office on June 2nd to review the results of our 2021 accountability, financial statement, and federal grant compliance audits. Just real briefly, the accountability audit covered this year IT security policies, accounts payable specifically with credit cards, open public meetings, and our financial condition. And very pleased to report that we had another clean audit, no findings, no management items. And for those of us who are keeping track, it was number 25. So very pleased with that, to have it wrapped up with good results, and thank everybody for their support.
Thank you. Any questions for Aaron on that clean financial audit? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll go on to the next item, which is executive committee board meeting structure. We've discussed this in executive committee meeting. Is there any, we haven't actually committed to the new 2 board meetings a month framework. The goal, one goal is hoping to avoid what we're having right now, which is meetings go over the hour. Les, is there more to discuss, and do we need to take action?
Yes, so to both. The issue for discussion is whether to move from the executive committee structure and 1 board meeting to 2 board meetings a month. The idea being that we can build some better board capacity. We have some meaty issues for the board going forward. Things like we just talked about with zero emission bus, fare recovery, and the kind of general strategic thinking of where WTA is headed into the future, just to name a few. And so looking at that, trying to build capacity for the board to have those. This meeting would be a great example of, if we had 2 meetings last month, we could have knocked off about 45 minutes of this meeting with approvals last meeting. And we had a quorum of the board on that. So the idea is to build capacity for the board to tackle some of these more meatier issues, and so move to 2 meetings a month. The main effect on that is on Paul and Seth, who are the 2 members that are not part of the executive committee as currently structured, and would be part of the 2 board meetings. Paul is not able to make it. He had a offsite with county council government today. Did have an opportunity to chat with him about that, and he's supportive of doing that and believes that it'll make us more efficient. So not to put pressure on Seth on that, but want to open that up. So that's the background on the why. of it, efficiency and build capacity for more meatier discussions. And I'll stop there.
Board members? Seth, go ahead.
Restate or clarify, what is the authority that requires us to have an executive meeting? Somewhere I know.
Yeah, it's in our bylaws. So if the board wants to move in this direction, next month we'd bring back a bylaws change, and then talk about when we want to implement this switch.
Okay. So I don't object. I'll do whatever the majority. For me, it's just a question of they book me really tight, and that's all. It's just a finding time for one more meeting. So, but I support it.
So that's what I just want to clarify. We're talking about getting rid of the executive meeting and going to 2 board meetings. So essentially, it would be a wash of the number of meetings. It would just be a matter of the meat and potatoes of each meeting.
Correct. Yes, sir. So the current existing executive committee would just transform into a board meeting. If one of the board members can't make that one, the board can always say, okay, we'll hold off and bring that back at the second meeting for action. So there is some logistical things that we can use to make that work. But the idea is try to make each of those hours a little more efficient, so we don't have to repeat things like we did for about 45 minutes of today's meeting.
Yeah, so Eric, to use your meat and potatoes metaphor, I think we're hoping to avoid having leftovers warmed up again at the second
right. So I'd be interested in what Michael and Scott think, because they've been on the board the longest, and see if they see a plus with
I've
one or
chafed
the other.
under the inefficiency of the current framework. Scott, I don't know about you.
Yeah, this would be a good move.
So I'm looking for a motion to direct the administration to develop a change in the bylaws to affect this change.
So moved.
And I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion before us. Is there any further discussion of this? We'd have to approve the bylaws change and then discuss when we'd start changing the meetings. We could try to do it, soon, this summer, this fall.
Yep.
Any further discussion?
I just wanted to say that, for Seth, because he wasn't there for one of our discussions, that, we had talked and acknowledged that, he and Sat Paul wouldn't be able to be there for every meeting all the time, likely. And we agreed that if there was a quorum, that was fine. And, if there's ever something on the agenda that, it needs to be moved because one of you can't be there, then I think that that's fine too. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And we can be sensitive to make sure that, like the zero emission bus presentation, those things that are done at a time when everybody's going to be there.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion to direct the administration to develop a bylaws change? There's no further discussion. Are there any objections? Hearing no objections, you have our direction.
Yes, sir. We'll bring that back in July.
Okay. General Manager's report.
Yes, sir. So we do have, one thing before I jump into it, Tammy was able, in regards to the Skagit interlocal, she heard back from Skagit, so I'll turn it over to Tammy just to close the loop on that one, so we don't have to bring it back later.
I'll just be really brief. Skagit has decided to start at 15 years old, so we will adjust to make it the same as them. That will make the marketing a lot more efficient, the message a lot more clear. So that change is going to happen.
So 18 and younger ride free on all WTA buses, but also 15 and younger on the connector.
Actually, they will all be free. 18 and younger will all be free, even on the county connector routes. And then when Skagit launches their program, it will be on all Skagit routes as well. The difference really will be, we want the kids that are 15 to 18 to have a UMO card so that we can track the ridership, but also so that operators don't have to make a decision at the fare box about whether or not that rider is a youth.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Okay, thanks, Tammy. Good job on that. That makes it a lot easier. Thank you. So wanted to, this is a substantive part, was one of the things that we've been talking about is the emergency declaration, COVID emergency declaration. So wanted to bring that back, the status of that to the board and where I think we should go with that. Josh has been doing a great job leading our incident command team on that. So I'll turn it over to Josh to give us an update on why it was done and kind of where the status is and the effect of it. And then I'll jump in after that. So over to Josh.
Well, thank you. I'll try and be brief. I just want to say that right now we're averaging about 2 to 5 employees a week being excluded for symptoms or positive tests. This is down from obviously from the peak we saw in February. At last check, about 80% of our employees have received their initial course of vaccination and are considered vaccinated. And WTA is starting to wind down our COVID response. In April, we quit requiring employees or riders to wear masks. And most recently, we adjusted our processes and are no longer excluding from work those who have been exposed to COVID. Instead, we're focusing on those who are symptomatic or tested positive. This is important because it allows us to adjust some of our required social distancing and things like that. So we're able to go back to having like 2 transit operators riding in a shuttle, for example, to get down from here to the station. Changes in our response overall has also slowed. We're no longer having a whole bunch of new tasks or having to respond to a bunch of changes from L&I or the state. And we're looking at reducing the size and scope of our incident management team. As you recall, this all started with the GM's declared emergency. The declared emergency provides for really 3 key things. The first being excluding non-essential employees, which we actually never used in this incident, so that part of the policy wasn't applied. It also allowed us to suspend portions of the CBA. Currently, there are no suspensions of CBA in place. And I think the only time that came up maybe was around markups, where we kind of did some additional markups and things, but I'm not positive on that. It wasn't generally used. It also allowed us to suspend policy and issue temporary policies. And you do remember that we did at one point suspend some procurement policies. We then are back on normal procurement policies now. Currently, we actually only have 4 temporary policies in place, and we're ready to start winding those down and have plans to expire those away. All this is to say the value of declared emergency has started to diminish. I think that's back to you, Les.
Well, you can see where we were going with it. Bottom line on it is the real reason to keep the emergency declaration is just as a risk management thing. If things start spiking back up, that we have that flexibility. But 2.5 or 2+ years into this, and as we're scaling these things back and learning to kind of live with COVID, I feel like it's time to end the declaration with the understanding that if things start spiking back up and in the fall or things to a point that we would come back and rediscuss whether we need to reissue it or not. But feel like to be intellectually honest on what we're doing and our actions matching where we're at. Feel like it's time to rescind that. The ramifications, as Josh mentioned, there's 4 policies that are out there. Some of them end on their own, and then the others are tied to this would end, like a cascading leave policy, for example, which we'd build in like a 60-day window so folks could make sure they know that's coming back online and things. So with that, I wanted to raise that to make sure the board, 1, was aware, but 2, in case there's any objections or contrary thoughts on that. Ash, and so we would rescind it on the end of the operational period on July 11th. Okay, yes, not seeing any hands or comments or anything. So we'll move forward that way, and then see what happens this fall and whether we need to go back. But I think we have the tools and the lessons learned from this experience that we can manage through. Josh and his leadership with the incident management team will be closing things out and developing an after action report with lessons learned and things that will help us into the future and prepare us for other pandemics or other kinds of emergencies that may arise. So So we'll take that action, and not seeing any comments or objections. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. One of the other things wanted to tee up for the board is usually in August, we have a workshop to start preparing for the budget. There's a meeting on August, I think it's 18th, would look at doing something like we're doing today, extending and do a quick business at the front, and then extend and do that workshop on budget issues and strategic visioning and how we align those kinds of things. So no decision made here today, but just wanted to, we can talk about it next month, but wanted to tee that up on that one. A couple other things. We have the rodeos returning. That's the driver skill competition, essentially, for oversimplification. But that will pick back up this year on June 26th, which is a Sunday here at WTA. It starts at 9. There'll be lunch at noon, and you're all cordially invited if you want to come watch some incredible transit operators do some amazing things operating a bus. It's pretty spectacular. Also, operations-wise, 2 things. Summer operations began on June 12th and will run till the fall on that. Also on the restroom situation down at Bellingham Station, we have 2 new, well, I won't say new, they've been down there for a little bit, and I passed that along, restrooms, porta potties down there to be used. We've developed a security system to kind of latch those at night, which has lowered the incidences of vandalism, which caused the other ones to be taken. Indoors, we're still working through the cleaning and the approval process. We have to get that scope of work that is approved by the county health department, do the scope of work, then come back and have it tested again, and before we reopen. And in a parallel path, the facilities team is looking at, okay, how do we do that into a future to keep it safer and not end up back in this same spot. It's a societal issue. You may have seen Starbucks national articles about Starbucks looking at closing their restrooms as well. So it's not alone on that, but are looking at that and do recognize there's a need. Maureen and I were downtown earlier this week and had a conversation with a gentleman about a homeless gentleman about how he really relies on those. And so we do recognize that aspect of it as well. Good piece of both sad and good news. Mike Bozzo is retiring on the 19th of August. And so we've gone through a process, and well, we'll be very disappointed to lose Mike and his skill sets. We've extended an offer, and he has accepted. Andy Bowler from the county, who is currently the superintendent of maintenance and operations at the county, will be joining us as Mike's relief. Andy is a lifelong Whatcom County resident, has been with the county for, well, since 2011 on doing that job. Before that was worked as a project manager in the private sector with Interwest and Granite Construction. So as we move into a capital phase into the future, well positioned on that as well. So super excited. He'll start August 1st. Mike's last board meeting will be the 18th of August. So we will embarrass him accordingly at that point. So I think that's everything on. Am I missing anything? I'm looking towards staff. Am I missing anything that I should have brought up? Okay. So thank you for that. So Mr. Chair, we've got 10 minutes left for a hugely meaty discussion on strategic visioning for the board. Maybe what I could respectfully recommend is we have July 14th, the executive committee. Maybe we preserve that as the full hour and discuss, invite Seth, Paul, and Seth if they're able to make it, and have a discussion. I just hesitate in the remaining time to.
Yeah, I agree. This is unfortunate. Hopefully I didn't run the meeting poorly. It seemed